welcome to The Ring, Euronews' debating show broadcast from the European Parliament here in Brussels. Once a week, two elected members of the European Parliament go head-to-head to debate the most pressing issues facing the European Union. Today, we hone in on the escalating conflict that's gripping the Middle East. As EU nations risk getting dragged in, where does this leave Europe's economy and security? Luis Albertos and Amaya Echevarria report.
The US and Israel's attacks on Iran and the ensuing Iranian retaliation marks one of the most serious escalations in the Middle East in years. Tehran's targeting of Western military bases in the region and the involvement of Iran-backed militias in Yemen and Lebanon have heightened fears of a spiraling conflict. For Europe, the crisis is not a faraway problem. It touches directly on the bloc's energy security, migration flows, inflationary pressures, and the safety of European nationals in the region. Yet, the EU is struggling to exert any diplomatic leverage on the conflict, which has exposed the fault lines dividing its leaders. Spain has openly condemned the US-Israeli intervention and questioned its legality. Yet France, Germany and the United Kingdom, after initially distancing themselves, have fallen in line with the US and expressed readiness to defend their allies' interests. Can the EU act as a credible diplomatic intermediary, providing space for de-escalation, or will it remain politically aligned with Washington while operationally sidelined and economically exposed to shocks it cannot control? Once again, Europe's long-standing preference for rules, trade and negotiation is being tested by hard power realities.
Just some of the pressing questions we have for our contenders today. Let's meet them.
Hana Jalloul, a Spanish MEP from the Socialists and Democrats group. A political scientist and former Secretary of State for Migration in Spain, she is the Vice Chair of the Committee on Foreign Affairs at the European Parliament. In the context of the war in Iran, she said, "Unilateral military actions should be avoided and rejected. Diplomacy and respect for international law should be the path to follow. Wars, insecurity and uncertainty only make the world a worse place. The EU cannot have double standards. De-escalation is a must." Reinhold Lopatka, an Austrian MEP from the centre-right European People's Party. A long-standing foreign policy specialist, he focuses on security and defense and is the chair of the delegation for relations with the Arab Peninsula in the European Parliament. The totalitarian regime in Tehran poses a grave threat to the Gulf region, to the Middle East, to Israel, and to Europe as a whole. At a moment when the Middle East can least withstand further turmoil, Iran's strikes on several Gulf countries risk widening divisions and undermining hard-won efforts towards stability, he said.
Hana Jalloul, Reinhold Lopatka, welcome to The Ring. So the idea here is to give our viewers at home a glimpse into the debates that happen here in the European Parliament. So I'm hoping that you'll feel right at home here in The Ring. So my first question is to you, MEP Jalloul. Were the initial attacks by the US and Israel on Iran over the weekend, in your view, justified?
I mean, as you know, and as my Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, have stated, we think that any unilateral military intervention that have not passed through the Security Council of the United Nations is not in compliance with international law. So we condemn any unilateral attack. This is not to say that we are supporting the Iranian regime in any case, you know, because we have been against the Iranian regime criticizing the killing of Masha Amini and, you know, the protesters, you know, in the streets that were fighting for human rights and their liberties, and we have always condemned the relation of the Iranian regime with the militias such as Hezbollah or the Houthis or Hamas. So very critical with them always, and we fought to include the Revolutionary Guard in the EU terrorist list.
So a condemnation of the Iranian regime, but also of the US-Israeli intervention. Mr. Lopatka, do you think that this military intervention from the US and Israel was justified?
I can't agree. Why? Because if we would wait until the Security Council of the United Nations is acting, we would never have a result. You know, it is blocked by Russia and China. They always support Iran, whatever is ongoing there. So don't forget, this regime in Iran, the Mullah regime, is a terrorist regime. What did they do? they killed thousands of their own people. There was state oppression to the Kurds. There are 8 million Kurds. Have in mind how they killed Masha Amini some years ago. They are founding terrorist groups in the region, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. And they are a big danger also for Europe. We should not forget it. It was a diplomat, he was in Vienna, in our embassy. Then he was sentenced here in Belgium for 20 years because he was supporting terrorism here on European soil. So what I want to say is, we can speak about international law, and here you can say maybe it was illegal, but I think the United States and Israel were legitimized to start with these strikes.
So let me put that argument to you, MEP Jalloul. He's saying, well, maybe the legality is questionable, but isn't Europe letting the US and Israel do its dirty work in the Middle East by going after the proxies, going after the nuclear and missile programs of Tehran, for example? Do you agree with that?
Well, what I do think is that we have diplomacy for something. First of all, we cannot use double standards. We cannot criticize other aggressions, of other countries and then say that this is something we can. But this is about international law, the system that we gave to ourselves after 45. So either we believe in international law or we don't believe in that. And we have means like diplomacy. Let's remember that one day before the conflict, even the Iranians sitting in a table of negotiations with the Omanis said that they will work not to enrich themselves. We know that, and we have investigating, and we sent inspectors in order to see that they were enriching. And even if the director of the nuclear agency said a few days ago that they were not sure that they were building nuclear weapons, but they had more than 60% of the allowed enrichment of uranium. So we have been very critical of that. We were under control, but don't forget that we have also a deal in 2015 between Iran and 6 other countries where the US were within that countries, even Russia and China. And then the US unilaterally deployed afterwards, which had as a consequence Iran enriching much more and restricting more of the inspections. So either we have all a consensus against Iran on diplomacy, fighting the enrichment on uranium and targeting any other kind of activities they can have outside, or it cannot be unilateral. We need to go all together and based on international based rule system.
You bring up this question of double standards because the EU does pride itself on upholding the rules-based order, international law. You said yourself that you question the legality of this, yet the EU always is talking about international law in places like Ukraine. Isn't this double standards from the EU?
No, not at all. Why? There's a big difference between the invasion in Ukraine of Russia to take the country, not respecting the sovereignty, not at all. And the situation here, the UN Charter, and I'm absolutely sure that the purpose of it is to protect human life and not to shield terrorist regimes like in Iran. The Security Council is not working, so we are in a very difficult situation. Because I think the bigger threat is when the Security Council is misused by regimes like Iran, by dictators like Putin. And on the other side, we have to do everything to protect the interest of our people. And fighting terrorism, and Iran is the biggest sponsor of terrorism, giving Israel the chance to survive as a nation, I think this is our duty, and it's absolutely in the interest of Europe. So there's a big difference and no double standards, not at all.
Your reaction?
But Mr. Lopatka, we are not talking about the right of existence of Israel. We all do believe in the right of existence of the state of Israel. We have supported that, and we support Israelis. We don't support this government, certainly, of extreme right, but we do support Israel. This is not about this. Let's not go into mixed things. No. And then you talk about UN Charter to defend human rights, but then you are against the Security Council because it's inefficient. So there is a contradiction there. This is one. And second, what we are talking about here is that we need at least to talk between us, to have some resolution in our council and with our member states. You saw yesterday night that even France was saying that they are against this invasion. Starmer, Prime Minister Starmer, is not even supporting that. So there is a huge division, even if Starmer is not part of the European Union, but Europeans as a whole. So we need to have at least some base, of unity between our member states and us as a European Union in order to conduct this. And it's not to say that we will support in certain things. For example, the French also deployed some defense system now in Cyprus. So when it comes to certain things, we're going to be united, but we need to have a talk between us. This is not about unilaterally, and please, let's not mix this with the issue of Israel being a state, because we do believe in Israel. We don't mix this.
But sorry, in the ideology of Iran, Israel is in the center, and Ahmadinejad, when he was a president in Iran, and his slogan, from the river to the sea, it is in the constitution of Iran to destroy the state of Israel. Don't forget it. Don't forget it. And you have to understand here, Israel and, of course, the United States are very close with Israel. And now, what did they do? Yes, on the one hand, we had the negotiations. When I was state secretary in Austria, in the foreign ministry, I traveled to Iran to start these negotiations. And then we had the negotiations in Vienna. But they used it, on the one hand, having the negotiations, on the other hand, to enrich uranium. And they were very close to the atomic bomb. They were very close. And then, when they are on this stage, it's too late.
Okay, I'll have to stop you there. This brings this round to an end. There's plenty more time for debates, do not worry. So let's move on. It's now time for our contenders to challenge each other by firing their own questions. So let's get started. I'll start with you, MEP Lopatka. Your first question for MEP Jalloul.
As we mentioned already, the government of Spain has been one of the very few in Europe to condemn the United States and Israel's military action. And you didn't allow US bases in Rota and in Moron for operations against Iran. Do you think that it was okay how Spain acted? Was it solidarity or was it the opposite?
Thank you for your question, Mr. Lopatka. Well, I will say that there is, from the 80s, a U.S. defense cooperation agreement between Spain and the U.S., and the use of the bases are something is a prerogative of the government of Spain. So they have the right to let this be in use if it is in compliance with international law, which we do think it's not in compliance with international law. The message of the president was very clear today in the morning. He said no to the war. We don't know what is the outcome of this war yet, but we do really certainly know that what the wars bring is much more immigration, terrorism, uncertainty, the rise of prices, and this affects European citizens too, and this affects European security too. So this is why we are really worried about that. And another thing you said before, we have defended the Gulf countries, of course. We have released statements, even my Prime Minister and the European Union, because we do believe that Iran should not have attacked any Gulf countries. We are supporting all of them. This is solidarity because they have been attacked and they have also the right to defend themselves. Okay. And then when you were saying about the European Union and supporting Prime Minister, we are very grateful because the Commission stated yesterday very clear they will support Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez in trade issues because of the attacks of President Trump.
Because, of course, we know last night that President Trump said he would halt all trade with Spain because of its position. Now, I want to give you the opportunity to ask your first questions, please, to Mr. Lopatka.
Yeah, it's you know that Secretary General Guterres has explicitly stated that U.S.-Israeli strike on Iran launched February 28th violate UN Charter, the one you were mentioned also before, and there was no Security Council authorization. How do you justify military actions to Iran?
First of all, I have to say the Secretary General is correct on the letter of the law, but we have to see a broader picture. We cannot end with a legal paragraph. And it was a commission an independent commission initiated by the Swedish Prime Minister, a Social Democrat, in the year 2000 after the United States have bombed Serbia. And this commission, Kofi Annan was the Secretary General of the United Nations, they said at that time, yes, it was illegal, but legitimate. And I see it now in Iran. Yes, you can say it is illegal, but it was legitimated. And you gave the answer. What did Iran? They bombed the Gulf countries, all the Gulf countries. They are a big threat. They sent drones to Cyprus. So we have not to forget how big the danger was coming from Iran. And they proved it. And they prove it today again, because they bombed today again Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and even they bombed Saudi Arabia.
Let me stop you there. This brings this round to an end. We've heard the views from our two MEPs. I will still be quizzing you on this issue, but it's time to bring another voice into the debate. And I'd like to bring in a voice from across the Atlantic. General David Petraeus, the former CIA chief and US Army general, spoke to Euronews earlier this week, and he said it would have been good for Europeans to join for defense purposes. Iran is not going to limit its targets to just US bases and Israel. My understanding is that the possibility of European nations taking part in a more offensive capacity has been discussed. The fact that it is being discussed indicates that it is certainly a possibility. What's your reaction to that?
I have certain doubts on it because, as I just said, France deployed some of their capacities, and even the UK, because of the bombing of near airbase strikes in Cyprus by the Iranians. So yes, they are deploying some teams and equipment there and everything, but that's not imply that they are fully involved in that. As far as I know, because of the statements of Prime Minister Starmer yesterday, and then also Macron, and certainly Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez.
But if I may ask you, if the assets and allies of the West in the Gulf, for example, are being now targeted relentlessly by Iran, doesn't that mean that Europe has now a responsibility to step in and help its allies?
That depends if we are asked for. We have not been asked for, as far as I know, by the GCC countries. They have big capacities, they have big teams. We are super in solidarity, supporting their right to defend themselves against Iran, as well as we criticize also Iran attacks also to Israel that killed also 9 people the other day in Israel, and also criticizing the fact that more than 52 kids were killed also in Iran. But we have not been asked by now, as far as I know, by any GCC country.
Do you think it's a danger now that Europe's going to be dragged in a more offensive way in this conflict?
How I see it, Europe should be active. We should not only look what Israel and the United States are doing. Also, it is in our interest, for example, to support the United States to open the Strait of Hormuz again. And here we were active in the Red Sea. By the way, also a proxy supported by Iran, the Houthis.
We haven't discussed, if I may, because I do want to bring this aspect in, is the regime in Iran. It's unclear whether Trump is pursuing regime change. The EU has made statements in recent days, von der Leyen, for example, supporting the idea of regime change. Should the EU be intervening here and calling for the toppling of the regime?
Our strength in Europe is not in military operations, but we are very strong in institution building, in supporting civil society, in building up institutions for a free and democratic Iran. And here, of course, we should be very active to support the people and also to support the Kurds.
And rumours that Reza Pahlavi, the son of the last Shah, could be invited to the European Parliament perhaps in the next weeks. What do you make of that?
I would refuse completely his intervention in this parliament. Everybody has the right to talk, but of course, I think we cannot be supporting this person. Even Trump was saying yesterday, by the way, he will not be supportive of him. We cannot repeat the mistakes of the past. Who is this man? It's not representing the majority of Iranians.
Sorry, it's a decision of the Iranian people.
Yeah,
I think
this is why let's going to do elections.
We should not judge. We should not judge them. It's their decision, and we should invite not only one person. We should invite a group of activists. And if he is one, if he is one in this group, if he is one in this group, I don't have a problem.
Okay.
Focus not only in him, but in other people.
We're all warmed up here. It's time, I think, to take a short break here on The Ring, but do stay with us. We will be back very soon. Welcome back to The Ring, Euronews' new weekly debate show, where I'm joined this week by MEPs Hana Jalloul and Reinhold Lopatka to discuss the escalating war in the Middle East and its implications for the European Union. The conflict has now caused the effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz, where 20% of the world's oil supplies and seaborne gas tankers pass each year. We took a look at fresh data showing the impact of this on the price of natural gas in the EU, and as you can see there has been a dramatic spike since the conflict broke out on Saturday, with EU gas prices almost doubling to more than €60 per megawatt hour, the highest in more than 3 years. So, okay, it's clear that we have an energy shock here in Europe. Is it true to say, MEP Jalloul, that Europe is always the one suffering the economic brunt of these conflicts in the Middle East, and it's going to affect European citizens and their pockets?
Yes, of course. Not only European citizens, but the rest of the world, because as you just said, 20%, of gas is passing through Hormuz. So I think this is affecting our pockets, our economies. Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez was stating today in the morning that our country is prepared in order to confront that reality, but certainly that kind of wars always bring in uncertainty.
We saw it with Ukraine. We're seeing it again, the vulnerabilities of the EU energy infrastructure system. How worried are you about the impact of this on citizens, but also on industries as the EU tries to make itself more competitive?
Yeah. I don't want to minimize it. Yes, there is an economic fallout, but it's for the moment. And yesterday already President Trump promised to send navals there that they can reopen the Strait of Hormuz.
But Trump said that, but he didn't say anything about European tankers. It was about US tankers.
Yes, but it affects us. And not only Europe is affected. Asia is more affected. You see it at the stock markets. So what I want to say is, yes, for the moment, it is a bad situation. But on the long run, for me, the situation would be worse if Iran had got the chance to develop an atomic bomb. You have to see it. For the moment, yes, it is a bad situation. But on the long run, I think we must be willing to pay this price for the moment.
We heard earlier, though, that the argument here that the International Atomic Energy Agency even saying, well, there was no real evidence that this bomb was imminent. Is that something that you would give back to Mr. Lopatka?
Well, I just want to say that it's not my statement, but the director of the Atomic Energy Agency, he was saying there was no any indication about the building of any nuclear weapon, but it's still, they were enriching more than 60%, which was more than civil use purpose that was set by Iranian government. So we need to criticize this. And they have restricted also inspection. I might say, though, let's see what's happened. If there is a resolution by the U.S. Congress, it's being thought in order to stop the strikes. So many Americans also are against this war, especially Democrats. Let's see what's happening in the Congress with that.
OK, well, now it's time to move on to our fifth and final round. Are you ready? Now it's time for something a little bit different. I will ask you a set of very short questions, and I require a very short answer, yes or no. So let's get started. I will start here with you, Mr. Lopatka. Should the EU help trigger regime change in Iran, yes or no?
Yes, it's necessary.
Yes, but democratically.
Is Reza Pahlavi a legitimate opposition
No.
figure? Is Reza Pahlavi legitimate?
One of many figures.
Have EU sanctions on Iran worked?
No.
Not as much as we wanted.
Is de-escalation in the Middle East now feasible?
If we want to, yeah.
Very, very complicated.
Has Europe lost its diplomatic clout in the Middle East?
No.
No, but we need to improve it.
Does
And
the
fight for
EU
it.
have double standards?
Yes.
No, I don't see it.
Should the EU now publicly condemn the initial US-Israeli intervention?
No.
Yes, condemning also what Iran is doing with the GCC, Israel, and the rest of the countries in the region.
Was Spain right in denying support to the US in terms of using its bases?
Yes, of course, based on our prerogative to do that.
No.
Has von der Leyen overstepped her mandate on foreign policy?
No.
She's a member of your group.
Yes, because he needs to act with the council too. So
And-
it's nice, but she needs the council
And
too.
what about Kaja Kallas? Is she now relevant in foreign policy? Can she have an influence?
She could be better.
Kaja Kallas?
I agree.
Should the EU continue to observe Trump's board of peace?
Yeah.
Yes, if that let us be part of negotiations.
Okay. Is Europe too dependent on US security guarantees to act independently?
Yes, but we are working in order to be independent by ourselves.
Broadly speaking, yes.
And they need to become more independent?
Yeah.
Is the EU now just a payer but not a player in the Middle East?
More and more we are a payer and not a player.
Yes,
Is Trump's America still an ally of Europe?
always.
Even after
Yes.
what Trump said about Spain last night?
Yeah, I mean, we have signed these deals of 50% on trade issues, and he is confronting us on that things. But we need to keep our transatlantic relationship, but not submissively. Not submissive.
Is Trump still an ally?
He is an ally, even the situation is sometimes very complicated for Europe.
Does the EU need to rethink its relationship with Israel?
No.
No, but that does not mean that we need to criticize what they are doing in Gaza, because they killed more than 70,000 civilians. This government killed more than 70,000 civilians.
Okay, and my last question to you both. Has anything that your opponent has said today made you change your mind or your viewpoint in any way? Let's start with you.
Yeah, that we should also have in mind, after this time of war, to find a diplomatic, a political solution.
And what about you, MEP Jalloul?
Well, I like to hear my comrade Lopatka, and I think it's very important that we concentrate. This is part of diplomacy in what we believe, that we need to talk, hear each other, and we always learn some of the other. Yes, I'm positive on always dialogue.
Okay, and that brings this edition of The Ring to an end. Thank you so much to MEPs Reinhold Lopatka and Hana Jalloul for joining us today. And thank you to everyone at home for watching. Remember, get in touch with your thoughts by emailing us on thering@euronews.com, and see you very soon here on Euronews.